Our topic for today is really business and societal good. Is it what we do or is that who we are? And our panelist comes from very diverse backgrounds, doing really good things in their respective fields. So to start us off, I'm going to go to Sri. And I also do want to say that being the only second female speaker for today, I think she will deserve a big round of applause as she starts to give us her opening remarks. Thank you, Sri. Over to you.
Thank you. I feel like I don't even have to say anything. Just being here and represent the women is good enough. But I just also want to make the remarks that among the crowd here, most of you are men. The few women who are here are invited by the Women's Forum. So shout out to the Women's Forum. And I hope that next year we'll have more women joining this.
Here.
And so over the last few days, the traffic in Singapore has been crazy. I have been running around between this event and the Women's Forums, and I know there's a couple of other events as well. And I suppose that topics on the fourth industrial revolution, disruption, cybersecurity, rate hike, capital outflow, trade war, geopolitics have been discussed at length. And these, of course, are very important issues to consider. And as Assistant Governor of the Central Bank in charge of monetary policy, reserve management, and payment system, I've been following these issues as closely as most of you here do. But as important as these issues, and so is humanity. And I'm invited here, not in my capacity as a central banker, but in my capacity as a philanthropist. And don't get me wrong, I'm not as rich. I don't have money to give, but I have time, I have ideas, and I have love to give to disabled children, something that I have been doing in Cambodia.
Yes.
Thank you. And so most of you would ask, why is it that I venture into this? And there's very personal reason. My two children are born with special medical needs. And to me, it was heartbreaking. And you know, when you're in despair, I actually went to every religious building. So church, temples, pagoda, whatever you name it, I was looking for some miracles. And that's, you know, a mother instinct. But I come to realize that I was actually more lucky than many other mothers whose children were sick, sicker than mine, but who don't have the ability to foot the medical bill for their children, and I do. And so because of this, I started to get involved more in the different organizations that help children with underprivileged children with medical needs. The many trips I've been to hospital, I've encountered families who've lost their children because they don't have money to buy a pouch of blood for transfusion, parents who would starve themselves so that they can save money for the kids' medication. So all of this, it's in a way, it's also pushed me to set up a foundation called Raksa Kumar to help these people. And why am I doing this as a central banker? I think, so most of the things that I've done is mostly handing out money. So is it sustainable? No. But I don't look at it, so economically it's not sustainable, but I think I don't look at it from the economic perspective. I look at it from other perspective, because as a central banker, as someone who's in a position to influence policy making, being able to interact with these people in the ground make me more realize, what am I doing as a policy maker? Can I do something for these people? Will the policy that I implement trickle down to the children in the village that I've just met who has Down syndrome? So in a way, it's made me more human. Also, I mean, it doesn't address the questions of CSR and whether it is just about handing out money. I think in general, we agree that we can't just go and cut all the trees and then make ourselves feel better by giving out money to the people from whom you just destroyed their habitat. But I think that every company need to look at the benefit of the customers. Part of the young societal leaders here, they're very, very young, very inspiring people. Some of them has forgone their potential of earning big money. Some of them has, at a 22-year-old, set up social
enterprise,
enterprise to help the people. So I think that if this young generation can do this, most of you here in the room who are at the level where you are should also look beyond the bottom line and see the humanity side of it. And I think a lot of the discussion that we've discussed so far is about, I feel that it's very, it's all symptomatic kind of way to address issues. So you talk about geopolitics, you talk about trade war, but all of this, it's about frustration from the people. It's about income disparities. You see at the US, the Trump phenomenon, the professor this morning said it's not the cause, it's just a symptom of frustration. You see it in Europe as well with Brexit, with Macron, who's coming from no political parties and who won the election. You see it in the Middle East and you see it in Asia, and you know which country I'm referring to. So why can't we just look at the root cause of the problem, look at the human side of it, and see how we can make people have a better life, help the environment, and not just looking at, making benefit out of it. And whatever product that you introduce, there's some fintech companies who have done a great job. And I think also for fintechs, it shouldn't be about fintechs introducing new things. It's about, are we going to help people to have a better life? And not just, are we going to have a better bottom line by introducing this?
A large part of, big round of applause, please. A large part of your social impact came from a personal experience with your children, right, with a cleft lip. And then you saw how those who don't really cannot afford. Many a times people are into philanthropy or they are into social impact, largely perhaps due to their personal experiences. Chachai, his nickname is called Thor, so we call him Thor, has a very different kind of social impact. You started a social enterprise to work with the disabled, particularly the blind, but you come from a family business of automotive parts. So how did that gel? And maybe if you can just share your story very quickly about the work that you are doing among the blind and the disabled in Thailand.
Right, thank you, Martin. So I'm founder and CEO of a small social enterprise with a big goal of creating an inclusive societies where people with and without disabilities can live together in harmony. So what we do is we partner with government and private sectors to design tools and technologies to engage them back into our societies, and also enabling them to be a part of the team, be a valuable membership of the societies.
And you want to share a little bit about some of the projects that you have done? I will let him tell the story, but he is both an inventor and a social entrepreneur. He invented a fabric pen for the blind to actually draw and do art. Runs an exhibition of which I had the chance to visit in Bangkok, that you can feel the art pieces of how the blind drew, work with artists. So I'm not going to steal your thunder. I really would like you to share the story with the crowd.
So we work on a lot of projects, like Martin mentioned, like Pen for the Blind, so that blind kids can do arts. And arts, it can be implemented in like mathematics, science, and everything. We do application with cinemas to make sure that blind people can now have access to cinemas by enjoying the same time, listening to the audio description at the same time as sighted people. We work with companies, we work with sport companies to make sure that people with disabilities can have a chance to exercise equally. And we work with government to do community development, to enabling them to make sure that they have skills, soft skills and hard skills to become an employees in companies.
The earlier panel, we were talking a little bit about this whole idea of customers. I think it was Tony Fernandez who said that their focus is about just meeting customer needs, same for John Riady. who are your customers when you talk about social impact? You are a central bank, and then you have your philanthropists working with the ground or the social impact on the ground. And Chachai, you are a social entrepreneur. There are not many of it are money-making, so to speak, in your case, right? Some of it are charity. Who then is your customer?
Right, so let's start with me. So my company is a social enterprise, right? So we got some grants from government, about 50% of it. But the rest, we got grants from companies, right? We work with companies to design tools, right? And also, like, we do job placement. We do job placement like headhunting service. So the company pay us to get quality employees with disabilities. So the whole thing is kind of like self-sustainable financially while creating a social impact at the same time.
Everyone is my customer. I'm the kind of person who's happy to make others happy. So, and I work with one person at a time. So
No fixed target
no
audience.
fixed target. If you need my help, I will run.
So her email address is no. The one thing I do want to ask you, because as I was reading more about the work that you do, and then now I'm going to move more from why we invited you here in the first place, but to your official role. One of the comments that you gave in an interview, that a large part of what Cambodia is having now, or at least in the last decade, has been using the US dollar. And as a central banker, you want to see a lot more use of the real within the country itself. And you call it realization.
Yeah.
That caught my attention because you mentioned, and I quote you, that this is the best way you can help your people. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in Cambodia, 90% of the economy is in US dollars. And so the main economic activity is in US dollars, but the lower value transactions are mainly in local currency, and it happened in the rural area. So any fluctuations in US dollars, the people who are the most affected are people in the rural village. Now, why do we want to do this? First of all, as the economy, dollarization has helped us in many ways. It's given more confidence to investors. But as the economy grows, I think we need to take stock and see where we are and where we want to go. And with the central bank having limited ability to intervene or have limited monetary policy tool, I think it will be hard for us to contribute to economic growth. So we are trying to encourage the use of local currency. We call it encouraging the use of local currency rather than de-dollarization, because that may scare investors that we just want to pull dollars out. Now, by doing so, we're going to help. We hope that we'll be able to help people in the rural village as well. So we're very aware that it has economic benefit to the country being a dollarized economy, but we're also aware that there are people in the villages who are also disadvantaged because their income and their spending is mostly in local currency. And there are things that we want to help them do, but limited by the fact that we are dollarized. So we're taking a very slow and soft approach to it. We introduce incentive for people to use local currency rather than putting a burden on people using US dollars. So we've introduced FAST system, which is a real-time account-to-account transfer but only for local currency. So for those who have a dollars account, they will have to pay a higher fee or use a different channel. We also have introduced a number of other monetary policy tools, but then that will be beyond the topic, to help lending in local currency, to reduce the interest rate on lending on local currency, because people in the village would mostly borrow in local currency. At the moment, it's very expensive for them to borrow because the majority of the funding of the banks are in US dollars. And so they have to convert it into local currency and then lend it to the people. So it is the farmers who are bearing the foreign exchange risk. and also they're paying higher rates. So these instruments are introduced to help exactly the people who are in the rural
Trying to
area.
serve.
Yeah.
And I like the idea, and it caught my attention as I was reading and now hearing from you firsthand, is that we use the tools at our disposal with a very central core mission, which is, in your case, how do I have the ability to help my Cambodian people specifically, and the tools that you have as our monetary policy. For many companies, our product, our supply chain, our manufacturing process, how do we therefore use, and really now entering into the topic that we're talking about, how can companies use their own supply chain more than just creating CSR program? Chacha, you work with companies on their CSR programs. They run with you with the blind people, the disabled on marathons, and they sponsor and so on.
Right.
How has that relationship been for you with the companies? And maybe the second part to the question is, as a social entrepreneur, what is your aspiration for companies to go beyond that?
Right. So from my experience in dealing with CSR projects from companies, I've seen some changes from the past few years. See, like the world a long time ago is divided into two sides, right? We have companies, for-profit company, we have NGOs. But these days, they become more like gender. It's a spectrum, right? So there's no longer two sides anymore. And what I'm seeing is that two sides are now converging to something in the middle. Like from NGO side, they are converging to be a social enterprise, to be sustainable, financially sustainable, right? And for companies, besides doing CSR projects, they are moving towards creating social impact, right? So these two sides are now converging into the middle ground. And what you said, like, before this, like long time ago, CSR is more like donation, right? So company donate monies. But these days, they are changing, right? They are not calling social enterprise anymore. They're not corporate social responsibilities anymore, right? They're calling creating social impact, right? So the thing that forced them to do CSR, there are two things, right? So first one is that the power of people, right? These days, people choose where to buy the products from which company based on the impact that company is creating. So that's one way. And the another way that I've seen a lot is the employees inside that companies. They want to work in the companies that, not giving financial return only, but also for the value of it. So in order to recruit talent, the company needs to do something more than just, daily business, but also concerning the social as well, to make sure that, when the employee, especially young generation, they want to work for the company that they'll be proud of when they have a logo on the T-shirt. And that's a company that worth existing, doing something valuable for the societies.
And the ability for the employees to say, hey, I'm so proud that my companies are doing this. Right. And therefore, it breeds loyalty, a positive workplace engagement, high productivity, largely because of that. So that it is good business.
Right.
But are all this just on the surface? As you work with companies, is there a danger for all these altruistic goals to be purely just business needs? Could it be that CSR can be the DNA of the organization? Do you think that it's possible? Because you run a social enterprise. So
right.
To a certain extent, you have a double bottom line, in some case, a triple bottom line. I've seen your packaging of your products. Environment is one of your bottom line as well.
Right.
As a social entrepreneur, and the hall in this room, and we're going to be taking questions through the app as well, so I hope you have questions coming in for our panelists. How do businesses actually weigh the both? Sometimes it costs money to do good.
Right.
But in your case, doing good is the one that actually brings you the revenue. You want to share a little bit more?
Well, people think about doing CSR is like just spending money. It's a cost, right? But it's not actually like that. How do I put it? It's up to us to make sure that CSR projects or social impact, it can be counted by dollars and cents. Meaning that we as a consumer can use our ability of spending, right? To make sure that, the companies that do good, they will get more customers, right? Also with the employees who recruit talent, you need to do CSR projects to make sure that your brand image in terms of talent pool is like up high, so you can recruit talent. So it's up to the people to make sure that CSR projects, social impacts, can be counted dollars and cents. Because I believe that company decisions are made based on money, right? So to make sure that CSR projects or social impact is embedded sustainably into the company, we as a people need to make sure that they are counted as dollars and cents. So the company doesn't have to trade off anymore between financial impact and social impact because it goes hand in hand. And that would be the convergence between the companies and NGO into something in the middle.
So we make their social impact their key return on investment.
Right.
To a certain extent.
Right.
We have a question that's coming in from the floor to both of you, and I'll probably start with Suri. How do you convince companies and stakeholders to believe in your vision for societal impact? How do you convince companies and stakeholders to believe in your vision for societal impact?
You probably need more women in your companies, then there are probably more empathies in the organizations and do more social good. But I want to give you an example of a sustainable CSR, and that is microfinance. You all have heard about it. Now, in Cambodia, microfinance, a lot of them start off as NGOs. So when the country opened up in late 1980s, there were a lot of NGO flowing to the countries. There are advocacy NGO, there were developmental NGO, there are all sort of NGOs, you can name it there. And some of the NGO help people to rebuild our life because we have a lot of refugees coming back from the Thai and Vietnamese border into the country and trying to set up their livelihood and start fresh. And so these NGO initially will be handing out money to the people. And people will look at it as a grant, and they don't actually bother to pay. And obviously, this is not sustainable. And I think some of the NGOs realize that they need to be more sustainable. So following the Bangladesh model of microfinance, they start to separate their CSR and, their social mission, humanitarian objective, and their microfinance institutions. Well, they lend money with the same purpose of helping the people to rebuild their life, but because it is a loan, people are expecting to repay back, and therefore they are expected to make good use of the money. And some of these NGOs now has become a very good example is Cleda. It's now one of the biggest bank in Cambodia. And the reason why it worked, I think there's a lot of help from the government as well. The National Bank of Cambodia in year 2000 has introduced a regulation where we required microfinance to be regulated, and we're one of the first countries in the world to do that. And by asking them to be in the regulated environment, we provide better confidence to investors, but also more transparencies of what the microfinance are doing, but also we can look after from the perspective of consumer protections. And we receive a lot of criticism that as a central bank, we should be focusing on financial stability, on price stabilities, and why spending resources on supervising small institutions like this. We felt that it was necessary for this microfinance to be sustainable, and so we have put up prudential ratio and make sure that their income level is good. We go and visit the customers and see whether they're benefiting from this. And it has helped this microfinance in a way to gain more trust from the investors. So now there is a lot of foreign banks coming into Cambodia to acquire microfinance who start off as NGOs. They are able to grow and therefore being able to lend more to people in need. And also the rural economy has greatly improved thanks to this. But then there's also other problem aside, over blending, over indebtedness. But that's another topic. But just to say that by helping people, they're also helping themselves. And this is just an example in a microfinance sector, but I think in other consumer goods sector, you can also find similar, stories.
But you made a pretty, back then, I think, a not a very popular choice by capping the interest rate for microfinance at 18%. It used to be like 30%. I think you're probably one of the first in the world, if not.
So even before the cap interest rate in microfinance sector in Cambodia was already low. So the interest rate was put up because we felt that it was time. So the reason why microfinance in Cambodia is able, and actually Cambodian microfinance sector is one of the most successful microfinance sector in the world. And the reason why we put the cap, it's because we felt that it come to a time when there need to be somebody need to do something. The government need to step in because the microfinance was getting very complacent because they're making a lot of money. So, but they also pride themselves that they're helping people. So they think that it is okay. We think that it is not okay because before we didn't put the cap because there was no other alternative. But now there's a lot of technology available. Why can't we explore that? So one of the main costs of microfinance sector is their branches and the way they deploy their they call it credit officer. So for microfinance, it is more costly to manage loans because they have to send the credit officer to the villages so when you're dealing with people with low income, without title deeds, without all these property as collateral, you literally have to trust the credit officer to do the work for you. So the people will go there and do their assessment and then when it's time to go and collect the money, they will ride their motorcycle 50 kilometers per day to collect the monies and so on. And so we thought that these are the things that microfinance can do without because we have a credit bureau, a company that I chair as well, that provide credit scoring. So if it's just a small amount of money, why can't we just use that credit bureau? We also have payment service provider who can help transfer money so that by using agent in the rural village, people don't have to travel all the way to the branch and repay their loan. They can just use it next door. We have also many other tools, many other technology to help them reduce costs. And we felt that if we don't do anything about it and put some sort of constraint on them, they would just go and enjoy the status quo forever.
I remember in my previous life, just actually last year, with the Institute for Societal Leadership at Singapore Management University, I read a report that the repayment rate of microfinance is far higher than collateralized repayment rates. So it is good business, but I'm just glad that there is some form of regulation so that it doesn't run away.
Poor people are very honest.
Yes, yes they are.
And, and mostly so in the microfinance sector in Cambodia, 80% of the borrowers are women.
80% are women.
And that's why the repayment...
all the banks, all of a sudden, you have changed your target audit. No, actually, the banks already know. Just a couple more questions that have come in. Chachai mentioned how social responsibility can be a method to attract employees.
Right.
How will this trend change or grow in the next 5 years as the Gen Zs enter the workplace?
Right. So let me before that question, I want to say what do I want to say? What was the questions again? Oh, how to convince company, right?
Yeah.
So how to convince company, I actually show them the impact. So because I think even though the company is like companies, right? But the one making decision are human, right? So you love forests, you love cleaners, you want to do good for others. So it's very easy to bring them out and then let them see the impact, right? And then the thing that I said to them, you don't have to give us money. The thing that you can do and you can do best is to make sure that every business decisions is based on social impact, right? In your companies, in your whole supply chain, can you incorporate social impact into every part of the business, whether your suppliers, the way you manufacture your products, the way you sell it, the way it's management. There's so many things you can do to create a social impact. You don't have to give money to us, right? So, but in order to do that, maybe in 5 years time or 10 years time, there won't be an NGOs or social enterprise anymore. And that's a good thing, because that's the world we want to live in, the world of convergence between companies and making impact, right? So that's the way we convince our customers to make sure that they follow our ideas.
I've always wondered whether we can come to a place where there isn't a need for corporate social responsibility program anymore,
Right.
because every corporate is socially responsible. That would
and that's
be
a good thing, right?
That would be a really good thing, from hiring
Yeah.
to our vendors, to our suppliers, to our procurement, to
Right.
our manufacturing,
Right.
all the way to our sales. That every step of the way, we have the ability to be responsible socially.
That's a
And
good
look
thing
beyond
because-
the bottom line. That if we can look beyond the bottom line. A lot of the discussion we had this morning is how do we, with all these challenges, how do we keep our bottom line intact, or how do we make it better and take advantage of it? So it's come down to the bottom line, and I think that it's a mindset, but you also have to consider that the new generation of consumer are very conscious about what they're consuming. And the YSL here, I'm the only one who has an extra job as a central banker. The rest of them are social entrepreneurs, and they're doing great job. They could have go to the private sector and earn a lot of money, but they decided to do it. So these are young people who do it, and I think my generation and probably your generation, most of you here are probably, I really want to know the average age of this room.
Should we do a poll? No, let's not.
But I mean, it's important to consider your target customer as well and what they want.
Yeah.
A few days ago, we visit Grab office,
Yeah.
and then we talked to them about like why do they want to work at Grab, and I think they said like they feel good when Grab can actually help people to have job opportunities, right? So that's the thing that new generation value more than just financial return. So in order to attract new talent, companies must try to incorporate this kind of value into their brand, not for the sake of PR sake or selling products, but to recruit talent as well.
And just the nature of the statistics that we heard,
Right.
that Grab has helped 1 million Indonesians open their first bank account,
Right.
because of them working for Grab. Sort of stir in the hearts. I said, wow, that's what companies can do a lot.
Yeah, and all the employees are very proud of that.
Time flies when we always have fun. Thanks for all the questions. There is one here that I want to end off with because time is running out. What is one message? I look around the room. These are the movers and shakers in this region and around the world. As young people, and I like to still consider myself young, as young people on this stage, is there one thing that we can look at our corporate leaders and say, this is the one message that we have as young people for them? What would that be for you?
Well, this is the only world we have. It's not perfect, but it's the only one we have, right? So I believe in the power of business, right? It's a big machine and a very powerful machine in the world of capitalism. So why don't we use this business to improve the earth, the thing that we are living in, to make sure that even though we are gone, our children, our grandchildren will have a nice forest, we have a clean air, we be able to live equally after we are gone. That's what we do, like we do things for our children. That's all it's about.
Yeah, I'm not young anymore, so nearing my expiry date. But I think we have to look beyond maximizing shareholders' return. And a lot of us here, what we do is maximize shareholders' return. And I think we should also look at maximizing the societal return. And at the end of the day, we'll all die. And what do we leave behind for our children? And I like what you mentioned. So.
That's great. And if we look at the various sessions today, we move from world geopolitics to the local region and so on. At the end of the day, companies and corporations have a huge part to play.
Right.
Governments and policymakers have a huge part to play. Civil society, young society leaders have a huge part to play. And all of us as consumers have a huge part to play. And I think the ability for us to look at corporate social responsibility or social responsibility in itself lies not in just the other person, but it lies within the palm of our hands and the decision we make throughout the entire supply chain that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have had this enjoy this lunchtime entertainment, but more importantly, the message, I think, of the young society leaders. They are in the room, and they will be here towards the end of the session. Please feel free to go up to them and ask them difficult questions. That's what we want to test them on. But it has been a real pleasure to be having this opportunity. Would you please join me in thanking our panelists, Chacha and Sari.